All right. Yeah, that's it. Councilwoman Riley has objectivity. I might keep my mouth. Evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the business meeting of the Binghamton City Council, 6 p.m., 12 July 2023. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Rezinetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley. Councilmember Friedman.
Present.
Councilman Burns.
Present.
Councilman Strawn.
Present.
Councilman Scanlon.
Present.
And President Scringy.
Present.
That's 6 here, 1 absent. Rezinetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, the president will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the June 28th, 2023 business meeting and the July 5th, 2023 special business meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motioned by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Please be mindful for any public comment periods that may be announced or that ever occur. Residents wishing to submit public comment may do so electronically by emailing their comments prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting to clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov or in person during the actual meeting during the public comment portion of that. At this time, we will move to public comment. Again, as a general reminder, all individuals who wishing to speak have 5 minutes to speak. Please state your name and whether you work or live in the city of Binghamton, or you may submit a request for information to be read into the record prior to 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting at clerk@cityofbinghamton.gov. Are there any individuals present who would like to speak, please? Please, sir. Of course. Good evening. Floor is yours. Sir, forgive me. My apologies. There's a little square button on the microphone. If you could just make sure it's on and there's a green light that's visible, I appreciate that. And if you could just provide your name and whether you work or live in the city of Binghamton, and the floor is yours, sir.
My name is Stephen Mushak. I do live and work both in the city of Binghamton. So as I mentioned, my name is Stephen Mushak. I'm director of Triple Cities Makerspace. We're a nonprofit located here in Binghamton. In a month, we'll celebrate our 10th anniversary, trying to serve individuals within our community. 7 years in downtown Binghamton itself. From what I've been able to witness, these type of public comments fall into 2 categories. A member of the community will comment on what they believe you're doing wrong, and I do have some suggestions, or they will make an impassioned plea to try to tug at your heartstrings. The world we live in now, I don't know that either of those kinds of things works anymore. So I'm going to try something different. I can speak only to my intent as one of the founders of our organization. I wanted to create an organization that serves members of the community, an organization that brings something new and exciting for the betterment of that community. In the same year, we received our nonprofit status. The arena hosted an event titled Binghamton is Not Boring. If Binghamton was hosting events like that, I defy anyone to argue that something new and exciting isn't exactly what was needed. We've been ahead of the curve in many areas. We're one of, if not the first organization, to have a public charging station in the area. We won the BLDC business plan competition for developing an electric motorcycle. We were doing batteries before they were cool. Before there was potentially $1 billion battery industry in this area, the person behind it all lent me his $500,000 prototype for a few days when he visited our space. Broome County has large underserved and undereducated communities with no less than 16 designated distressed census tracts. Our organization is located in one of them, and the people we serve are too. For 10 years, We've tried to lower the cost barrier to entry for high-end tooling, equipment, and knowledge for the community to explore and engage with, to offer a creative outlet, education, collaboration, and space for people with diverse backgrounds to engage socially. In the last few years, we've tried to serve this community as an even greater force for good. We've taken all that we have and applied it toward workforce training. Ultimately, our programming serves different communities than the other workforce development programs. To our knowledge, our program is the only program of its kind attempting to rapidly develop in-demand advanced manufacturing skills that serves free of charge the distressed and marginalized populations we target. We've served approximately 80 participants so far and counting. Recently, in the last couple months, we've launched new programming. We've taken all these concepts and extended them to the special needs community. Demand has been such that we expect to double our year-end goals from 12 participants to 24. These are people that are often told, no, they can't, or they will never be able to do X, Y, or Z. By all accounts, they are thrilled to hear from our organization, yes, you can. And I'm not a psychic, and I don't think anyone is, despite what quantum physics may or may not be saying lately. However, I would be willing to bet any one of the committee council members that I can accurately guess more often than not who will receive funding and who will not, and not just the funding provided here. I probably shouldn't be able to do that if it's on truly a case-by-case basis. The presentation I gave about this funding that we're asking for was inspiring enough that one of the other people who were seeking funding invited me to make the same presentation for their organization. Watching the Community Development Committee deliberations online, our organization was put into one committee members must include organizations into their funding spreadsheet.
You have 1 minute.
Don't quote me, but my attempts to cross-reference the organizations that presented for these block grants to the development committees against those recommended for funding, as far as I can tell, half the organizations requesting received 100% of their funding request. Of the remaining, all but one received 75, and the remaining organization 50. There were only two appeared to not receive any funding at all. How we went from an apparent first round draft pick to nothing baffles me. I'm asking you to reconsider. What is it this council would like this city to be? We need your help here. Please deal us back in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, very much. Appreciate you. Of course. Evening, sir. How are you? Floor is yours. Floor is yours.
There you go. Thank you. Last summer, I was relaxing in my chair at Webster Street Pool on the south side when I was approached by a Dennis Gorman of 54 Davis Street in Binghamton, New York. He's a former police officer who worked for the city of Binghamton and once had issues concerning racial discrimination with a community member while on the force. He walked up to me without any notice or provocation and told me to leave the pool area. I noticed standing nearby was a woman named Mary Lou Rakowski, who resides at 184 Oak Street, 5 Oak Street, Binghamton, New York. She's someone who instituted an argument once with me years ago, saying that she was offended because I'm a minister and I was stating that, you know, God was Jesus Christ. He's a male. That offended her. She said to me, "What makes you think God isn't a female?" She stated this to me when I was a worship leader at the Saturday night contemporary service on Main and Chapin. That's called Redeemer Lutheran. She went there at the time. her church gave me an office record building. And how I knew her was she had a food pantry room in there, and I had my office in the rectory behind the church building. I'd apparently made her very angry with my believing that God is a male. Someone later told me she was into Wicca, which is a matriarchal believing religion. And this all leads up to what happened. A violation of my civil and personal rights occurred as follows. I was given no explanation whatsoever or anything in writing, and was terminated from swimming at parks that I grew up in, simply based on, I would assume, hearsay. I was never told why I was put out of the park, as well as what I believe could possibly be racial and religious bias. A few days ago, while at the Sherry Lindsay Park pool, so this is a few days ago. Now that was last summer with Dennis Gorman. A few days ago, while at the Sherry Lindsay Park pool, sitting in my chair, I swim and I sit in a collapsible chair and then I swim and I'm usually there for no longer than a half hour or an hour. I was approached by a Douglas Springer who resides in Endicott, who did exactly what Gorman had done. He walked up to me. I didn't know who he was, never saw him before in my life. And he said, "Get your stuff and leave the pool or I'm calling the cops." I was flabbergasted. I've never seen this man before a day in my life. I was permanently banned, according to Douglas Springer, who also stated, "I was a parole officer for 32 years. I know how to deal with you pussies." And when I told him that I would possibly serve him with legal documents, he replied, "You come to my house and you're going to get an AR-15 in your face." To which I informed him that I'm not threatened by people pulling weapons on me, as I'm a former successful kickboxer and my physical speed is still quite up to par. So I'm able to take a weapon from a person very quickly. Then when I asked him how long I was kicked out of the pool for, with no proof of doing anything wrong, he replied, "Forever." This is an unacceptable, unjustifiable sentence handed down by an entry-level employee who makes probably around $14 an hour, which is less than my friend who works at McDonald's on Main Street. This grievous handing down of a permanent injunction violates my civil and personal rights, and I feel it's based on racial because I'm darker than both these men and all the pool employees that work under them, and religious bias due to the disliking of my beliefs by Ms. Rakowski. Furthermore, when I got into my vehicle, Mr. Springer proceeded to intentionally rob me of more of my quiet enjoyment at the park, paid for by my tax dollars, by walking up to my vehicle, approaching the front of it, and writing down my license plate and announcing the letters and numbers out loud. A white van with a motorist next to my SUV observed this and looked at him curiously.
You have 1 minute.
The conduct of these two park employees is discriminatory. I believe it's illegal, threatening, and without merit. I've never as much as had a word with them ever before. I never saw them before. Nothing occurred that I'm aware of at these two pools at not recreation, Sherry Lindsay Park or the Southside Webster Street pool. Each year that I was approached, only between Springer, Bennett, and Rakowski, what I already told you. I also came up upon another individual that my brother knows, Robert Savecki. He was kicked out. A young man named Chris was kicked out. They don't know why. They drive these little white city cars and they go around just kicking people out. And I noticed, I thought I put it in here, but I noticed that the first time I was kicked out last year, I was, Ms. Ruskowski was standing there like, you know, I think she may have had something to do with it. And I have copies of everything I just read and the attached addendum of Foster Daniels plaintiff versus Dennis Gorman and his racial incident.
Your 5 minutes is up.
And I thank you very much.
Sir, thank you again. Just for the record, could you, I know we were able to hear before you got the microphone on that you live in the city of Binghamton, but could you just get on the record again per our chamber rules, your name, just so we could get that on the record?
My name is DJ. Last name is Scripps. That's a SCRIPSETZER.
Thank you. And if you'd like to hand that in, sir, I can make sure that that gets passed on as well. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. I know. Good to see you, DJ. I appreciate it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, were there any electronic forms of communication for public comment that were submitted?
No, there was not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, that being said, let's move on. Thank you for all those who spoke. At this point, let's move on to second read legislation, which who else has been planning? Who else is in planning, Madam Clerk, besides Councilwoman Resonetti? Do we have that? Real? Say it again.
Somebody committee. Yeah, great. If she wants to, sure.
I would be honored. I would be honored to call upon Councilwoman Friedman for the purposes of a motion.
I don't even know if
Now,
I,
Councilwoman Riley, what was that look? I saw you roll your eyes, Councilwoman. That hurt.
order in the chambers.
The gavel is right there.
Did you hear what he said?
No, I did not, ma'am. All I saw was your eyes.
I am sure.
Yes,
Republic-
Councilwoman
Republicans
Riley.
can hear
I have
Republicans.
data to back up my claim, Councilwoman. Anyway, Councilwoman Friedman.
Okay, thank you so much. It is an honor to read this. I don't even know if I know the lines. Okay. I asked for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 23-92. Well, considered in planning an ordinance authorizing the mayor to submit the fiscal year 49 annual action plan and accept any and all funds allocated by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development from the CDBG, ESG, and Home Entitlement Program.
Do I have a second? Motioned by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilman Scanlon. Discussion. Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, President Scaringi. First, I want to say thank you again to the CDAC, the Community Development Advisory Committee, who have a very difficult job of allocating this finite amount of money to between many worthy organizations and causes and projects. So shout out to them. I know they work hard and diligently to make sure that they do a good job. I also want to say thank you to our public comment, bringing awareness to the fact that the Triple Cities Makerspace was not included in this, and they and I was fortunate enough to be able to tour their facility on Friday. It is in my district, and I was able to see firsthand the kind of programs that they do there. A lot of equipment that I do not know how to use, but maybe could learn in the future. And I also received data about all of the community members that they serve, specifically community members in underserved populations, particularly veterans and people with disabilities. And so in light of that, I would like to make a motion to shuffle some funding around. And I do just want to preface this by saying it's a hard decision because, you know, I wish that everyone could receive all of the funding that they want, obviously. In making a motion to fund another organization that does unfortunately necessitate taking funding away from or reallocating funding that was already allocated. And so in deciding which budget lines to take from, I was hoping to kind of do the least damage, shall we say. I wanted to take funds from lines that would not destroy a program, or, you know, preclude a program, or, you know, a project from happening. So I tried to pick a couple of lines where it would be, you know, the resulting amount that the program would receive would be almost 100% of what they asked for. Councilwoman Riley is giving me a look. I need to justify this because it's going to be, it's the bad guy either way, you know, no matter what it is. So with that being said, in order to see if we can't give Triple Cities Makerspace the $20,000 that they requested, I am going to make a motion to and I want to make sure I'm using the right language. So I want to make a motion to move to decrease budget line CD 866.533.549.CDY49, which is in the public infrastructure line. I would like to make a motion to decrease that by $10,000. And so is that,
So, Council, may I for a moment?
yeah, that
So,
motion must stand on its own?
yeah, so,
Okay.
so just again, for the public record and for the body, so obviously we will, as it relates to the CDBG budget, any amendments that are proposed, which any member has a right to do, we're going to follow, chapter 26 of the city charter, section, T and W for first read and for reconsideration, which is that if we're going to move funds, it needs to first be decreased out, like you just correctly said, and then it would need to be moved into either some sort of contingency or general fund line, and then moved from there to the proposed line that you would. Now, in this particular case, we don't have a contingency line as it relates to the CDBG budget. So the closest thing that would mirror that from a budgetary perspective would be the revenue line that the federal aid comes in on. So that can be found on page 12 of 18 in the CDBG proposed FY49 budget. And it's the very top line. It's line CE.44989.CEY49. So that will act as the contingency line for any amendments that you would like to propose.
So my question then is, the decrease and then the increase are two separate motions, or do those have to go together?
So yeah, those are two separate, because technically you could just move it into the contingency line and leave it there. So yes, it would be, so for example, if you want to move funds from two different places, for all intents and purposes, you've got 4 amendment motions you would need to make. 2
Right.
that transfer them out, and then 2 that transfer them back in.
So the decrease and the move into contingency is one motion, is that correct?
The first motion decreases the line and moves it to contingency.
Right, okay,
The second motion would move it from contingency to
understood.
the line you would like to move it toward.
Right, okay, so I would like to make a motion to decrease line CD 8662.533.549.CDY49 by $10,000 and move that into line CE.44989.CEY49.
Do I have a second on the motion?
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilman Burns. Again, this is an amendment for introductory ordinance 23-92 to decrease $10,000 from line CDY 49 prefix .53549 to acting contingency of the Fed aid line ending in CEY 49. Discussion on the amendment proposal. Or any discussion on the amendment proposal? There's no discussion on the amendment proposal. Question? Councilwoman Riley.
You
Oh,
can
call
say
this.
that.
My apologies. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please, on the amendment proposal?
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
I'm supporting.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Nay.
Councilman Scaringi.
Nay.
Right, that's 4 ayes and 2 nays, Scanlon and Scaringi, and 1 absent, Resonetti.
It received 4. A majority of the quorum is present. The amendment motion passes. Councilwoman Friedman.
I would like to make another motion to move an additional $10,000 from line CD 7310.533.516.CDY49 and move that to line CE.44989.CEY49.
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. Discussion on the proposed amendment. Councilman Scanlon.
Yeah, just what's the heading on that line?
That is,
Forgive me, Councilwoman Freeman. No, you're okay. Could you please just give the title for both of those, the prior one and the current one? I'm sorry. I
yes.
meant to ask that earlier myself. I apologize.
No, that's fair. So the prior one from the previous motion was from the public infrastructure, under the public infrastructure heading, the line is capital program set aside. And then for this motion, this is under the youth programming line. And again, I know it's like no matter what line it comes from, it doesn't look good. You know, it looks like taking money away from another worthwhile organization. So again, I tried to pick a line where it would, this funding could still do a lot of good, and where the organization would get the majority of the funding, like almost all of the funding that they had requested, just again to justify that. So then the youth programming line, and that would be going to not the contingency,
Any other discussion on the proposed amendment? Question called.
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. Madam Clerk will call the roll on the second proposed amendment.
Just to clarify, was that 10,000 again from that one?
Yes,
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Nay.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scaringi.
Nay.
All right, that's 4 ayes, 2 nays, Strawn and Scaringi, and Resonetti is absent.
So with a majority of the quorum present, the proposed amendment passes. Wasn't that 4?
It was 4.
That was 4. Yeah, no, yeah. No, you're okay. No. So now we've got 2 moves. We've got 2 moves that have moved 10 grand each from 2 respective lines into the Fed aid line. So now going on the assumption, I don't want to speak for you, but now you would need 2 separate amendment proposal motions to move. Well, actually, because you actually could just do one with the 20 and put it into that line if you wanted.
So I guess I have question, because since Triple City Makerspace is not yet on here, I guess I would have to decide where it best fits. I thought the human services line, but I'm not 100% sure, actually. It seemed like other organizations were that seemed to be the best fit. I don't actually know how that.
Mr. President, are we allowed to
Yeah.
create a line?
Create a line? My understanding is no, because we are reviewing what the
You would.
CDAC has actually proposed because of the federal guidelines that are associated with that.
Right.
So we can move in and out, so to speak. We do have the right to do that. Yes, Councilwoman Freeman.
If I may, the reason why I picked the human services line is because looking at the other organizations that are underneath that, Action for Older Persons, American Civic Association, Broome County Urban League, et cetera, those seem to be kind of in the same realm, more so than like youth services and things like that. So I wonder if there could be not a new line, but a new sub
Right.
heading underneath that. That seemed to be the most fitting as far as I was able to tell.
Yeah, just as a point of information, I do want to communicate forward to everyone that if we change something that CDAC proposed, that is more than likely going to reset the public hearing process. Yeah, because the public can't speak on something that hasn't been finalized. So just keep that in mind. So forgive me, Councilwoman Freeman, you had the floor. I apologize.
No, that's okay. That's a good point, and honestly, I'm glad that the public has to weigh in. Okay, so I am going to make a motion to move $20,000 from budget line CE.44989.CEY49 to the human services line, budget line CD 8676.533.515.CDY49.
Second.
Yeah, so motion by Councilwoman Freeman, seconded by Councilman Burns. So that is, again, just substantively, that's to take the 20,000 and to move it into that line. Yes, from the Fed aid to the human services. Discussion on the proposed amendment. Councilman Burns.
So I didn't hear an answer. Can we add a sub?
I had a different question. I was not here when they presented the budget. When is the budget due to be submitted?
So I was, if I may, forgive me, Corp Counsel, if I could just, Councilman Burns, you had the floor. What was that again?
Are we allowed to create a sub category under human services?
That would carry the same weight of creating a new line.
Not, would it?
Yeah.
I mean, is it?
Right, because think about it.
Well, we got to put it somewhere. So
Right, no, I understand. Oh, you
Those
mean
entities don't have their own account. They're just
a
listed.
subheading, you mean? Oh, I see what you're saying.
You do the broad account, I mean.
Then that would make sense. That's not a new budget line. Okay, my apologies. I take that back. I do want to reiterate something else. The deadline for all of this is Friday. So just to keep that out there, Councilman Riley.
Thank you for that information, Council President. But as you can recollect, we've already moved and we've already amended the budget. So we might as well move forward. It's been voted and approved to already amend the
Well, procedurally, it hasn't yet. right? Because
No,
the whole thing amended has to be voted on. Right? So the RL has to be voted on as amended.
Okay, but even if we moved the money already, the budget has been amended.
Procedurally, it could pass or it could fail as amended. But just again, objectively by the rules.
Okay,
Right.
thank you for that clarification.
No, of course. Thank you.
The other option is that a motion to reconsider is also appropriate. for the same.
So, Councilman Strong.
Is there, I feel like in the past, maybe I'm completely wrong recollection. We did something after the fact, I think for the ACA or some organization. Is there any other mechanism that could be used? Because I feel like I'm in favor of this idea, but it's so late in the process. I'm just asking, I'm more of a question. Is there any other mechanism to do something?
Outside of CDBG?
I don't
talking
know.
about?
I'm just asking. It seems like we had money that was reallocated from some, I mean, is there another? I don't know.
So
the answer to that.
So just for clarification purposes, I know what you're referring to. What
And
that
it might be
was,
completely, but
that
there's
was-
other money.
that was
around.
unspent fiscal year funds from a prior fiscal year that weren't spent. So that's the reason why
Okay.
this is the confines within a current. Right, yeah. So the body will choose to do what the body so chooses to do. I'm going to objectively here is the recommendation that I'm going to make. Obviously, we are going to go through everything as on the floor. Well, we're talking about, let me stick with rules. So right now we're talking about the motion of the amendment to move the funds to human services. So let's stick with the rules. Is there any other discussion on that? Councilman Burns.
Did we get an answer about this, adding a sub?
About the subheading?
Yeah.
No, what? Objectively, there are federal regulations tied to this, so I'm going to err on the side of caution. And I'm going to say we cannot do that. My understanding is Council CDAC proposes a budget, and when they propose that budget, it kind of has two stopgaps. They propose it to council, can review it and make budgetary changes. Then after that, whatever that is, it's either failed, passed, or passed as amended, and then it gets handed off to the mayor's office. The mayor either signs or vetoes. If he or she vetoes, it comes back to us for a second round discussion for a potential supermajority to veto override. In my 7 years of doing CDBG budgets, I've never seen another name as a subheader put in. We've never done that.
Has this been held over already?
Yes.
Yes, it is. It's second read. So again, let's stick to the rules. Any other discussion on the amendment proposal that's been had a first and a second? Councilwoman Freeman.
Thank you, President Scrungy. So I have a follow-up question. If we are not able to create another subheading, do we know that this money will then go to Triple City Makerspace, which is the impetus for the amendment? Because I don't want to just move money. I don't want to just change the levels of the budget lines. The reason why I'm making this amendment is so that Triple City Makerspace can get the money. But now
To my knowledge, the mayor does not have line item veto power on something like that. I could be wrong, but again, there are federal regulations that are tied to that. So I'm going to err on the side of caution again. Say, I don't know. So again, any other discussion on the motion?
Well, that kind of makes me. I don't know if
Councilwoman
I want
Riley.
to. rescind
Thank
my-
you again, Council President. If you guys can reflect upon the last time we made amendments, we again would make adjustments to the overall budget. And there may have been, and this was during the budgetary process. So I think it may be a little different because we would have the zero line, remember?
Right.
And then we would add funding to the lines. But if you look at, for example, on page 17 of 18, there are some that have not been broken down into specifics. And sometimes, I mean, I remember them coming back. Well, I gave you the wrong page as an example. I'm sorry. For example, when we do the housing and the home rehabs, what have you, we usually do not break them out. We then allow them to. We've never voted on that, but we've seen where later it is specified as specific project. So,
Thank you, Councilwoman.
thank
Is there
you.
anything else on the motion amendment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk. Will you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Resnetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Nay.
Councilman Scanlon,
Nay.
and President Scringy.
Nay.
That's 3 ayes, 3 nays, Strawn, Scanlon, and Scringy, and 1 absent, Resnetti.
As a quorum of 4 has not been reached, the motion amendment doesn't pass. So that being said, I can do 2 things here procedurally. We can continue down the road of motions for amendments, which is each member's right, and that's fine, not a problem. The other is that we can move forward with a broader discussion about the RL item overall, which will be my suggestion that we do that. So I will just ask procedurally, are there any other motions for amendments on the floor? Councilwoman Freeman.
I guess I have a question.
Sure.
So would we then I guess like what happens next? Like, do we have to make motions to move the money back to where from whence it came, or do we vote on the whole thing as amended
So
with the money in the general like federal aid
great question. So
line?
here's what I'm going to suggest to the body. What I'm going to suggest to the body is, and I'll get this again on the record, I'm not speaking as a council president here. I'm speaking as a representative and a member of the body. As it relates to the motion, voting on the RL as amended, I am going to vote it down. And here's the reason why. Because considering the fact that we have a Friday deadline, what I will do in my role as council president is I will follow up with the mayor's office and with Corp Council immediately. If we need to call a special business meeting by Friday to look into this, then obviously I will entertain that by phone. We obviously don't have to schedule that now and in consultation with Corp Council. Procedurally, there's 2 things we can do here. We can either make amendment motions to move the 10,000 each respective dollars back to their original lines, which would then mean that we're just voting on the motion as it originally was presented, or I think it's procedurally easier just to get more information to vote down as a body. Well, again, this is what I will do. I will be voting no on the motion as amended if that comes up. And then I will entertain as council president a motion to reconsider the original RL so we can at least get the CDBG budget passed as it was submitted. And then if we need to come back around in 24 or 48 hours for a potential motion of that, we can do that. That's what I'm going to suggest. Councilman Burns.
If it goes for a vote for to be as it originally was,
Right.
and it's goes 3-3 and it doesn't pass, what happens to it? Does it then,
Nothing. It fails.
it fails?
Right.
So the budget has to pass sooner or later. So then would they resubmit it again with a new budget based on any changes they wanted or?
We would have to come back. We would have to come back as council, probably with a special business meeting to entertain motions to move things around with the needed updated information that I am going to spend the next 12 to 24 hours getting.
So what is best? I mean,
Is that even possible by Friday if there has to be a public hearing?
Yeah, well, that's the other problem. That's I'm operating. I can't do anything about that. That's just a function of time. It's an excellent point. That's why I brought it up to begin with. But my concern here is that I don't want to put into potential neglect any of the other monies that have already been allocated. That's my major concern, because this is a lot of money. In the aggregate, I'm talking about the entire budget. Councilwoman Freeman.
So a potential scenario could be, well, as of right now, we have $20,000 in the federal aid
Line,
line.
right?
So if we were, let's say we were to call the question, right, and vote on it as amended, we could just vote no, because we would be voting on having $20,000 in that random line.
Correct. That's actually what I said. What I said,
Right.
we're saying the same thing.
Okay,
Vote on it, vote it down as amended, and then I can entertain a motion to reconsider the original RL, and then we can vote on that.
understood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Allowed? Allowed? No.
Colleagues, with all due respect, I know you have a right to caucus, but we're in the middle of something.
Doing now. Well, once he said it was, that's. I didn't see it, but I had already seen it yet. Before the other one. There still would be 10 in there instead of 1. Well, something. I just wish. I support this. I don't think we have time to actually do it.
I've been blamed for a lot of things in my life. So. No.
So, is there any other discussion? All right. Seeing none, is the question called? Someone call the question, please.
Call the
question,
The
question.
question's been called. Madam Clerk will call the roll on our introductory ordinance 23-92 as amended. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilmember Friedman,
Nay.
Councilman Burns,
Nay.
Councilman Strawn,
Nay.
Councilman Scanlon,
Nay.
and President Scringy.
Nay.
All right, that's 6 nays, 1 absent, Resonetti.
This time I will entertain a motion to reconsider introductory ordinance 23-92. And I believe it needs to be made by a committee member. So Councilwoman Freeman, would you like to?
I would love to. Thank you for asking. I would. Do I have to read the whole thing?
No, just a motion of
Okay, I would like to make a motion to reconsider introductory ordinance number 23-92.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilwoman Friedman, seconded by Councilman Burns. Discussion on the motion. So keep in mind now, this is IO 23-92 as it was originally proposed. Councilwoman Rao.
Thank you again, Council President. I know the first round of this discussion, we were very, very supportive of the comments and the feedback that Mr. Mushak provided. So thank you for that. Many of us are unable to sit in during the public hearing or the hearings during the CDAC committee's review for the CDBG funding. So we appreciate that information. I do also want to shout out our CDAC representatives because they were giving us a lot of information. And unfortunately, members of the public were also writing about this budget and how it shifted many of the meetings and the deliberations, which is why Council Member Friedman led the initiative to try to amend it to align with what left the meeting. So again, I appreciate that. We do understand the importance of CDBG funding. We receive so much because of the poverty level in our city. And every year we talk about how it is allocated, and we want to ensure that it represents the needs of the community. Again, I trust the members we have representing us in making these decisions. However, this budget to me still does not reflect the needs of my constituents. And it's unfortunate, but again, we do understand time is of the essence, and we want the funding for the rest of the projects that, again, will meet the needs that we have prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Rao. Any other discussion? Question called. Question's been called. Madam Clerk will call the roll again for introductory ordinance 23-92 as originally submitted.
Councilwoman Rosanetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley.
Yay. Wow. As you see, I have a lot of hesitation because of what the comments I received. So I'm sorry about that. I is what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Councilmember Friedman.
Aye.
Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon.
Aye.
President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Rosanetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Motion passes. And again, I will follow up the body with the body by email within the next 12 to 24 hours on updated information that I found out. At this time, we'll move on with the preferred agenda. Are there any RLs that any member would like to move to the non-preferred agenda? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
First is introductory ordinance 23-95, considered in finance. An ordinance to amend the 2023 Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Facilities budget for health insurance.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-96, considered in finance. An ordinance to amend the 2023 Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Facilities budget to defund an operator 1 position and fund an operator 2 position.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-97, considered in finance. An ordinance to amend the 2023 Parks and Recreation budget for band concerts and movies in the park.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-98, considered in finance. An ordinance to amend the 2023 refuse fund budget for salary adjustments.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-99, considered in finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 capital fund budget to close bond and grant lines that are no longer active.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-101, considered in finance, an ordinance to void permanent ordinance 22-189 regarding the sale of 92 Park Avenue to Sabrina Brooks.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-104, considered in finance, an ordinance to allocate ARPA funds for contractual obligations of the Teamsters contract.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory ordinance 23-106, considered in finance, an ordinance to amend the 2023 general fund and Parks and Rec fund budget to fund emergency repairs at the Parks Maintenance Garage.
Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory resolution 23-48, considered in finance, a resolution authorizing the Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Facility budget to enter into an agreement with Ramball America's Engineering Solutions for engineering services.
Discussion. Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory resolution 23-49, considered in finance, a resolution authorizing the city of Binghamton to apply for a Brownfield Opportunity Area grant from the New York State Department of State.
Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory resolution 23-50, considered in finance, a resolution authorizing the city of Binghamton to apply for a New York Main Street grant from the New York State Homes and Community Renewal.
Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Next is introductory resolution 23-53, considered in finance, a resolution authorizing the city of Binghamton to extend the municipal cooperation agreement for fire prevention for Broome Tioga BOCES.
Discussion. Seeing none. Bless you, Councilman Burns. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the preferred agenda submitted. Motion by Councilwoman Riley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Scanlon. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resonetti.
Motion passes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time, we move on to the non-preferred agenda. Recognize Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-94, which also contains a seeker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-94. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 41 Grand Street to Kerry Warner for $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the seeker.
The following seeker motions are in reference to the legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-94, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 41 Grand Street to Kerry Warner for $500. I make a motion to declare city council lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Passes. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to identify the proposed action is listed under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, it passes. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed action will not conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations, nor result in a change in land use. The proposed action will not impair the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed action will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. The proposed action will not impact traffic or infrastructure, energy use, or water and sewer infrastructure. The proposed action will not negatively impact important historic resources, and the site was found to have no historical significance by the Commission on Agriculture and Urban Design. The proposed action will not result in an adverse impact into natural resources, erosion and flooding, or human health.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Resonetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes. At this time, the chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-94.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-100. An ordinance to amend the 2023 central services budget for professional services.
Second.
Councilman Scanlon, I think we need to go back to introductory ordinance 23-94
Oh, to read that again.
for a final read on
Yep.
that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-94, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 41 Grand Street to Kerry Warder for $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Is there any discussion? Is the question called?
Call a question.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Resonetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The motion passes. Recognize Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-100.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-100, an ordinance to amend the 2023 central services budget for professional services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Strawn, seconded by Councilman Scanlon. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called? Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns.
Aye.
Councilman Strawn.
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, 1 nay, Riley, and 1 absent, Resonetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With a majority quorum passed, the motion passes. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-102 with a seeker. Councilman Scanlon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-102, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 92 Park Avenue to Erica Farber for $55,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Burns. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon with a seeker.
Thank you, Mr. President. The following seeker motions are in reference to the legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-102. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 92 Park Avenue to Erica Farber for $55,000. I make a motion to declare city council as lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the motion passes. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to identify the proposed action as unlisted under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed action will not conflict with any adopted land use plan or zoning regulations, nor result in a change of land use. The proposed action will not impair the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed action will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. The proposed action will not impact traffic or infrastructure's energy use or water or sewer infrastructure. The proposed action will not negatively impact important historic resources, and the site was found to have no historical significance by the Commission on Agricultural and Urban Design. The proposed action will not result in adverse impact to natural resources, erosion and flooding, or human health.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Resonetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeker passes. Chair recognizes re-around for 23-102 to Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Director ordinance 23-103. I'm sorry, let's go back. Director ordinance 23-102. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 92 Park Ave to Erica Farber for $55,000.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. I do want to highlight that this is one of the RISE properties that the city was working on for several months in order to find the appropriate candidate that would not only live on site, but be able to do something with the additional residents on that property. It took a lot of time, but I am glad to see that we are doing what we intended to do in terms of increased home ownership opportunities for subsets of the population. Now, I will highlight that when we talked to Dr. Burling, we did ask about the qualifications. And would I have preferred someone that didn't make as much money? Absolutely, because that's part of the qualification. However, based upon the rubric, this person is eligible, and I celebrate that. Again, we're moving forward to increase home ownership. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. All right, Councilwoman Freeman.
President Scringy, I have similar sentiments to my colleague, Councilwoman Riley here. The Cities Rise grant does a few things, one of which is bring properties back online, kind of back up to snuff. And so I do appreciate that regardless of who ends up owning this property, it now is in better shape than it was before. And so I do think that's something to be applauded. I feel the same way as my colleague here in that, yes, technically, you know, this person falls within, you know, the rubric, which allows them to qualify for this house. But another point of the Cities Rise grant is to make homeownership accessible to people who would not otherwise be able to afford it. And I have trouble seeing how this is an appropriate recipient, given the fact that this person is one of the best paid city employee, or one of the better paid city employees, and also is already a homeowner. So as we see the incredible housing crisis that is plaguing our city, I can't help but feel like this, an opportunity to have a recently rehabilitated home for a reduced price is kind of a very special opportunity. And I would love to see it go to someone who would not otherwise be able to be a homeowner within the city of Binghamton. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, is the question called?
Call a question, Mr. President.
Question will call, the question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Nay.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 5 ayes, 1 nay, Friedman, and 1 absent, Resonetti.
With a majority quorum of 4 present, motion passes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time, Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory ordinance 23-103.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-103. An ordinance to amend the 2023 Police and Corporation Council budget for legal services.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns, Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Resonetti.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion with a seeker concerning introductory ordinance 23-105.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-105. An ordinance authorizing the sale of 76 Glenwood Ave to Brianna Torres for $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Friedman. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon with a seeker.
The following seeker motions are in reference to the legislation before us. Introductory ordinance 23-105, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 76 Glenwood Avenue to Brianna Torres for $500.
Do I have a second? Nope, that's not the motion yet. Sorry, Councilman.
I
Go
make a motion to declare city council as lead agency under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Can't.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Do I have all those against, nay? The opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to identify the proposed action as unlisted under seeker.
Do I have a second?
Can't.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Riley. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Councilman Scanlon.
I make a motion to issue a negative declaration under seeker for the following reasons. The proposed action will not conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulation that result in a change in land use. The proposed action will not impair the character or quality of the existing community. The proposed action will not have an impact. The proposed action will not have an impact on a critical environmental area. Proposed action will not impact traffic or infrastructure, energy use, or water and sewer infrastructure. The proposed action will not negatively impact important historic resources, and the site was found to have no historical significance by the Commission on Architectural and Urban Design. The proposed action will not result in adverse impact to natural resources, erosion or flooding or human health.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilwoman Friedman. Clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resity is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns, Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resity.
That was unanimous. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon. Back around for the conclusion of introductory ordinance 23-105.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-105, an ordinance authorizing the sale of 76 Glenwood Ave to Brianna Torres for $500.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question, Mr. President.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resity is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns, Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent. Resity.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That passes unanimously. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion regarding introductory ordinance 23-107.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory ordinance 23-107, an ordinance to allocate ARPA funds for the design of the Henry Street reconstruction project.
Do I have a second?
No. Second.
Motion by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Councilman Burns.
Thanks. I just think that the ARPA funds, it was said that it could be used for sewer and water, and I know that we're doing sewer and water there. But and we were always going to eventually redesign Henry Street. And what if we don't like their design? Then we'll hire another designer, and meanwhile, we've wasted ARPA funds on a designer. I mean, after it's designed and we start the work and we're spending the money on the actual sewer and water, et cetera, then I think it's okay, but so I'm not going to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other discussion? Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, President Scringy. I always have a lot of thoughts about ARPA funds. This is kind of difficult. I go back and forth with this because it's, yes, technically ARPA funds can be used for water and sewer, and in a public health crisis, we see how important it is to have running water and waste disposal. I know that this money had already been allocated for a water sewer project, and now it's being reallocated. Do I think this is the most hard-hitting COVID relief, like could do the most good use of this money? No, I don't think so, but I don't hate it. So I will give my my tepid support to this.
Thank you, Councilman. Any other discussion? Councilwoman Riley.
Absolutely. You knew I was going to make a comment. So during our work session, again, I did ask Megan and excuse me, Deputy Mayor to give us some information about the historical context. Because we were moving it from another line that was previously approved. And she did reply and return with a very detailed explanation supplied. Yes, planning portion of the Henry Street project is fundable under ARPA. But as I said before, just because it's permissible doesn't mean it's important or should be prioritized. I will continuously say we have too many people in need. Yes, we contributed 100,000 here, 150,000 there. But money like this, the 600,000, I would like to see dedicated to our under-resourced populations, particularly those we see as we leave the building, making their resting place for the evening outside of council chambers. Those we see as we're walking along Confluence Park, making their resting places for the evening. So no, I won't be supporting this thing.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other discussion? Seeing none, is the question called? The question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Nay.
Councilmember Friedman,
I've been swayed. Nay.
Councilman Burns,
Nay.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 3 ayes, 3 nays, Riley, Friedman, Burns, and 1 absent, Resonetti.
Without a majority of the quorum present, introductory in ordinance 23-1 fails. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of a motion concerning introductory resolution 23-51.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory Resolution 23-51, a resolution authorizing the city of Binghamton to enter into one or more agreements to provide support for payment of debt services.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and by Councilman Scanlon, seconded by Councilman Strawn. Discussion. Seeing none, is the question called?
Call the question.
Question's been called. The clerk will call the roll. Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Resonetti is absent. Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilmember Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
Councilman Scanlon,
Aye.
and President Scringy.
Aye.
That's 6 ayes, 1 absent, Resonetti.
Passes unanimously. Chair recognizes Councilman Scanlon for the purposes of introductory resolution 23-52.
Thank you, Mr. President. Introductory Resolution 23-52, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter an agreement with McFarland Johnson Incorporated for the design of the Henry Street reconstruction project.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, President Scringy. Even though, so I was swayed by the persuasive arguments of my esteemed colleagues, but I do think that the Henry Street reconstruction project is important. I just don't think that ARPA is the appropriate place. So I do support the project. Also, you know, there's a lot of flooding that happens there, and you know, it can definitely be more pedestrian friendly, more bike friendly. So I like the reconstruction redesign project. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Councilwoman Riley.
Thank you, Council President. But based upon the failure of introductory ordinance 107, there are no funds in this line as written. So we cannot move forward with this legislation at all
We can move forward with it.
without money in the line as written.
It's up to the mayor's
Yeah,
office,
it's
right?
two
at this point?
Say it again.
Mr. President, it's two different issues.
It's
Two different
yeah,
RLs, two separate RLs. regardless if the other one failed. It doesn't matter to me.
In
But that's
principle,
up to Brian there. That's up
Yeah.
to court counsel.
in principle, you're 100% correct. So if we would, can we just go through 23-52 and then I'll address that right afterward? If that's okay,
You mean vote through it as it's written?
move through 23-52 and then I'll address the funding thing afterward.
The only comment I have is that you'll note at the end of this legislation, there's a certification by Chuck Shager that there is a budget line that has $600,000
Okay. So
and it does.
Right. And that was my point. Thank you, but I don't think you were on the microphone so that our people can hear what you just said that supported.
Had it turned on.
Oh,
So
You-
the Cliff Notes version is there's a line in introductory resolution 23-52 as it relates to the project in and of itself with a corresponding line. So being consistent with the rules as we're talking about 23-52 right now, am I seeing any pushback against the project in and of itself, notwithstanding funding mechanisms?
No.
Councilman Burns.
I'm all for the project.
Okay, all for the project. Notwithstanding funding.
absolutely. But there was a precedent set before when we wanted to move the funding from a project. And it was written, do you not recall, we had a lengthy discussion and it was said that that could not move forward. Okay,
So I was just about to get to that. So if everybody is for the project, is there a motion to reconsider the motion that just didn't pass? Councilwoman Riley.
you Council President, as I said in the previous conversation, when we face this same quandary, we could amend the budget line. And remember, you voted with us and said we would bring it back, and then you pulled it back, and then you voted against it. So do you remember? You remember that?
Sure.
And we never did discuss changing the budget line. So again, here we are with a budget line that has no funds in it, but you're willing to vote it through.
No, we're not going to vote it through.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So my question is this, again, just procedurally. I just heard everyone say they're for the project. Right. So does anyone want to propose where the additional funds are coming from? Anyone? Okay, and while I appreciate that, we're at this time right now, so last time doesn't matter. So I'm going to ask if everyone unanimously supports the project, would anybody like to make a motion for those who are against it as to where we're getting the money from? Anyone? Going once? Twice?
I suggest they get it to wherever they were going to get it before they decided to use ARPA funds for it.
Okay,
Now,
well,
let our
operating on the
comptroller
assumption
figure
the
that out.
ARPA portion was there from the beginning, which my recollection it was, respectfully, that kind of negates that statement because it was always there from the beginning. So,
No, it wasn't.
yeah, no, for the turnaround, it is now, but so that's why I'm
But it
asking,
was going for a water project before. This is going for the design of something.
right? So I'm asking, I heard all 6 members present say they support the project. So that's fine. So if you want to support the project, does anyone who doesn't like the current funding proposal want to make a motion or present something as to how we're funding it?
I think we should have a meeting with the comptroller and the mayor, and they can come down here and we can go over all the books and figure out where to get.
So the answer to the question is no. Okay. So in addition to the CDBG, because you'll remember the mayor's office communicated that this needed to be expedited. Please keep your phones handy over the next 48 hours because now it really looks like we're going to be having a special business meeting. So just keep that in mind.
This,
Councilman Scanlon,
so this is on a non-preferred agenda.
correct.
I don't see where it's expedited.
It was,
So-
it was expedited on Monday, Councilman.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, I apologize.
No, that's okay. It was expedited for today is what I mean. Anyone want to add anything else? Going once, twice. 3 times a charm. Okay, so introductory ordinance 23-107 fails. Thereby extension, introductory resolution 23-52 cannot be considered. Anything else on that? Okay, we'll move on to communications from council members, and we'll start with Councilwoman Riley.
You, Council President, since last time doesn't have anything to do with this time, I want to reiterate what I said last time. As you all know, Porch Fest is a big event for the West Side and the entire community of Binghamton. I would liken it to almost Luma for the entire southern tier. And as we approach these dates, we are looking for supporters and volunteers. I would love to see some of my council members driving the trolley this year. That would be so great. So I just wanted to highlight that for those that may be listening. It's a great opportunity, not only to get to know your neighbors, but to listen to some bands from in and around our great city. July Fest just passed, and although it rained, it was still a great event. People were very excited about the free parking. Do you remember we talked about that? Although last time has nothing to do with this time. But there was a small sign that says parking has been covered by the city of Binghamton. And people said, oh, we hope that we can see more of this because it increased the I think they were using anecdotal evidence, just looking at what they saw downtown. But again, some of the residents verbally stated that they appreciated that the parking ramps were free and they were able to park easily and easily access Main Street. So that was, and there are still several programs going on. I would like to always highlight the work of NOMA right there in the 3rd district. Their Saturday programs in conjunction with the Binghamton Food Rescue, continuing to ensure that there are fresh vegetables and items to those that live in the city and choose to visit the facility. Please feel free to come out. And as you know, they were on the list for the CDBG funding. So again, kudos to them and to all the volunteers. And that's all I can think of to share with you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Friedman.
Thank you, President Scaringi. I don't have much to report. July Fest, like my colleague Councilwoman Riley said, was this past weekend. And despite the rain, it was still a great time. We just finished Pride Month. In June, July, I recently found out, is Disability Pride Month. So that people with disabilities are the largest minority. And what's interesting is that anybody can become part of that minority at any time. And so happy Disability Pride Month. I don't really have. Oh, and how could I forget the biggest holiday? July 20th is Councilwoman Riley's birthday. Happy early birthday. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Burns.
Nothing to report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Strong.
Thank you. Just said one thing, and I don't really even know why I'm totally saying this, because I just wanted to share my frustration with probably most people in the city of the ad hoc fireworks displays on the 4th of July. I honestly don't know what the solution is because there's so many. Councilman Bird's mentioned from his perch up on the South Mountain. He said it was unbelievable the amount of, when you can basically see across the whole city. I did receive a bunch of, emails and complaints. I am too frustrated. I don't know what the answer is. So I don't know why I even mention it other than to say I share the frustration but it's with the volume of them. I don't know if there is a true solution. It's a nuisance. It's a celebration in a way, but to go that late in the night is frustrating. Maybe we can come up with something, maybe we can't, but I just at least wanted to express my shared frustration with that, how late it goes. And that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Scanlon.
That's the report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. Just want to thank all of the residents of the First District who attended our community neighborhood watch meeting last night. It was a great turnout. I want to thank the mayor's office for being present as well. It was a great meeting. We got to talk almost an hour and a half. It was a great meeting. I just want to actually thank not only the mayor's office and everybody in the Parks Department and everybody who's on kind of outside third-party contracts, but the roads that are being paved throughout the city of Binghamton. They've really focused on quite a number of very specific neighborhoods as well as major thoroughfares. It's great to finally see Glenwood coming to fruition. So I'll definitely want to thank Mayor Cram for his support for that. Other roads in the First District, Holland and Ronan and a few others. So it's been really great to see all the work that's been going on. And again, just want a gentle reminder for my colleagues that not just with respect to CDAC and fiscal year 49 funds, but it just suddenly dawned on me as well that with respect to Henry Street, there was a public hearing tied to that. And if memory serves me correctly, the deadline for that is also Friday. So definitely keep your phones on. I will be it leaves some time, but I believe there was a deadline associated, which is the reason, if you remember, why the mayor's office requested it be expedited. That was why. So special meeting. So that being said, take a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Motion by Councilman Scanlon, second by Councilman Burns. We are adjourned.